I've always considered myself a practical person, maybe even too much so. When women my age spent money on travel and hobbies, I put every penny in a bank account for a rainy day, as my mother used to say. But the truth is, I wasn't saving for me. This morning I woke up in my little house on Vincent Avenue, where I've lived for the past 32 years. The creaky floor, the leaky faucet in the bathroom, the crack in the bedroom ceiling that looks like a map of California. All of these things have become so familiar that I stopped noticing these imperfections years ago. But today, I looked at them especially closely. Last day. Tomorrow, this house will be owned by a young couple with a young child. They offered a good price. Very good, in fact. Pamela Whitby, you finally did it, I said to my reflection in the bathroom mirror, fixing my gray hair into a neat bun. At 68, I've decided to do what I've dreamed of all my life. My little house is sold, and a new one, a luxurious mansion in the upscale neighborhood of Culver City, is waiting for me. Waiting just for me. I sighed, remembering Alan, my husband. He died of a heart attack 20 years ago, leaving me alone with 23-year-old Rowan. Alan worked as a construction foreman, and I worked as an accountant for the same construction company. We were never rich, but we had enough. When Alan died, Rowan and I had to tighten our belts. The boy had just entered graduate school, and I wanted him to get the education he dreamed of. I remember those evenings sitting at the kitchen table, counting bills, stacking them with urgent, can wait, and postpone. I refused new clothes, movies with my friends, trips to my sisters in Oregon, giving up everything so Rowan could graduate without worrying about money. I thought I was doing the right thing. My son is my extension, my pride, my meaning of life. That's what all my girlfriends said. That's what the women's magazines said. That's what society said. There's nothing more noble than sacrificing yourself for your children. But now, looking at my reflection, I saw wrinkles from sleepless nights, faded eyes that hadn't glowed with excitement in a long time. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost myself. It's your fault, I said to the portrait of Alan standing on the dresser. You left too soon. But it was a lie. I couldn't blame my dead husband. He wouldn't have approved of the way I raised Rowan after his death. You let him do too much, Pam, Alan used to say when he was alive. A boy should understand the value of money and labor. But after he died, I allowed too much, maybe out of guilt or out of fear of losing the only loved one I had left. I paid his bar tabs, his trips with friends, even the down payment on his house when he married Delia. I opened the old jewelry box where I kept photos. There's Rowan in his master's graduation robe. He's smiling and I'm standing next to him, proud and happy. I remember thinking that day that all the sacrifices had not been in vain. My son is going to be a successful man. He will have a good career. He'll be happy. And he did become successful. Data analyst for a major technology company. Nice house, 2 teenage kids, Nina and Kevin, a stay-at-home wife. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But something went wrong. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it happened. Maybe when I gave him $5,000 for his anniversary, and he just thanked me casually and immediately started talking about the new car he wanted to buy. Or when he forgot to call me on my birthday 3 years ago. Or when he stopped bringing the grandkids because they have a lot of activities, even though I'd seen their trips to parks and the beach on social media. I put the photos back in the box. It was time to finish packing. The ringing of the phone interrupted my thoughts. Hazel, hi. I answered when I saw my friend's name on the screen. So, are you ready for the big move? Hazel's voice sounded excited. I still cannot believe that you decided. I can't believe it myself. I grinned, sitting down on the couch among the boxes. You know, I almost called the realtor this morning to cancel the deal. Just try it. I'll personally come and pull your hair, Pamela Whitby. Hazel was always straightforward. Perhaps that's why we've been friends for 40 years. You deserve this house. You've worked your whole life, saving, denying yourself everything. Now it's your time. I know, I sighed. It just seems so, selfish. Hazel snorted. Selfish? Pamela, you're 68 years old. If not now, when? When you're 90 and can't walk up the stairs? You deserve that damn mansion, and the pool, and the garden, and everything else. I smiled. Hazel knew how to lighten the mood. She was the complete opposite of me. Bright, impulsive, not afraid to speak her mind. She'd been married twice, was now dating a man 10 years younger, and lived her life as if every day could be her last. What does Rowan think about you moving out? She asked after a pause. I stopped talking. There it was, the question I'd been avoiding. I hadn't told him yet. What? Pamela, you're moving in tomorrow. I know, I know. I fidgeted with the hem of my blouse. I wanted to surprise him, invite him and his family to the housewarming party. Surprise? Hazel sounded incredulous. You're afraid of his reaction, aren't you? I sighed. Hazel had always seen right through me. Maybe a little, but he should like it. The house is beautiful, with a big garden for the kids, not far from their house. Pamela, Hazel interrupted me. We both know that's not what this is about. You're worried that he'll be unhappy that you've spent the money. Money he probably considers his inheritance. I didn't answer. Hazel had hit the mark, as always. Listen to me, she continued. It's your money. You earned it. You have the right to spend it however you want. If Rowan's a real son, he'll be happy for you. You're right, I said, though my insides were tight with worry. I'll tell him tonight. I'll call him. Good for you, Hazel approved. And then you can tell me all the details. And don't forget about lunch tomorrow. I'll be there to help with the move, and then we'll celebrate in your new mansion. After talking to Hazel, I sat among the boxes for a long time, gathering my courage to call my son. Why is this so hard? Why am I afraid of my own child's reaction? When did our relationship become so strained? I remembered Rowan as a little boy who would hug me on his way home from school, a teenager who, despite being in his teens, always took the time to help me with my heavy bags, the young man who said he was proud of me at my college graduation. What changed? Maybe it was my own fault, giving too much, demanding too little, trying to replace an absent father, compensate for his loss with material things. But isn't that what all parents want? For their children to have what they didn't have? I took a deep breath and dialed my son's number. Dash, dash, mom. Question mark Rowan sounded surprised, as if he hadn't expected me to call. I remembered that he rarely called me himself lately. Hi, honey, I said as casually as possible. I have news. I sold the house. A pause. The house? Our house on Vincent Avenue? Yes, I tried to make my voice sound confident. I'm moving in tomorrow, and I'd like to invite you all to a housewarming party on Saturday. You sold the house? He sounded distrustful. Why didn't you discuss it with me? I felt my shoulders tense. Why should I discuss selling my house with him? I thought it would be a pleasant surprise, I said. I bought a new house in Culver City, on Delphi Drive. Do you know that neighborhood? Dash Delphi Drive. There was a note in his voice that I couldn't interpret. Surprise? Envy? Resentment? It's one of the most expensive neighborhoods. Mom, are you sure this is, reasonable? Quite, I answered, trying to keep my voice light. I got good money for this house, plus my savings, and I have a good pension. But he stammered. That's a lot of money, Mom. This is it. This is what I was afraid of. Money. Always money. Rowan, I've worked all my life, I said, feeling something like anger rise up inside. I deserve a nice house in my old age. Of course, he agreed quickly. It's just unexpected. You never mentioned you wanted to move. And you never asked, I thought, but I didn't say anything. Anyway, I'll be happy to see you all on Saturday, I said instead. At 2 o'clock. Come with the kids. Okay, Rowan answered after a pause. We'll be there. When I hung up the phone, a strange feeling came over me, relief mixed with anxiety. Rowan wasn't thrilled, that much was obvious. But maybe when he sees the house, he'll understand. Will realize that this house isn't just a waste of money. It's my dream. A place where I could finally live for myself. I went to the window and looked out at my old garden. The roses I planted 15 years ago were blooming now. Would the new owners take care of them? Or would they uproot them to plant something fancy? I sighed. Time to let go of the past. Time to move forward. At 68, life doesn't end. It's just beginning. That evening, I called Hazel again to tell her about the conversation with my son. He wasn't as excited as I thought he would be, I said, holding the phone in one hand and taping up the box of books with the other. He asked if it was wise to spend so much money. And what did you say? That I deserved a nice house. Damn right, Hazel exclaimed. Pamela, I'm begging you, don't let him make you feel guilty. How much have you given him over the years? 5,000 for the anniversary, 10,000 for a down payment on his house, paid for his education. And what have you gotten in return? He's my son, Hazel, I said. I don't expect anything in return. But some basic respect and gratitude would be nice. She snorted. You know, my mother always said, if you want to raise an ungrateful child, give him everything and demand nothing in return. I sighed. Maybe Hazel was right. Maybe I was giving too much and demanding too little. Anyway, they're coming on Saturday, I said. I hope when Rowan sees the house, he'll understand why I did it. I hope so, too, Hazel said, but there was no confidence in her voice. But prepare yourself for the fact that he might not be happy. You know your son better than anyone. What does he value more, your happiness or your money? I didn't answer, because I was afraid of the answer. After talking to Hazel, I sat on the porch of my old house for a long time, watching the sun set behind the roofs of the neighboring houses. So many memories, so many years. But now I felt a strange excitement, almost like when I was young, when everything was ahead of me. A new home, a new life. At 68, I would finally be living the life I'd always dreamed of. Big, bright rooms, a garden with fruit trees, a terrace where I could drink coffee in the morning, a pool for my grandchildren to swim in when they come to visit, if they came to visit. I pushed the thought away. Of course they will. Rowan will understand. He should understand. The move was less tedious than I'd expected. Maybe because the hired movers had done most of the work, or maybe because I was filled with excitement, a feeling I'd almost forgotten in recent years. My life had long ago become a series of routine activities. Rising at 6 in the morning, breakfast, work, dinner, TV, sleep. Even after I retired 3 years ago, the routine had been much the same, except that instead of going to the office, I'd taken an art class for seniors and occasionally gone out to lunch with Hazel. Now I stood in the middle of the spacious hallway of my new home, and it felt like time had turned back. The high ceilings, the large windows that let in the sunlight, the dark hardwood floors, it looked exactly as I dreamed it would. Don't just stand there. Show me your possessions. Hazel gave me a gentle nudge in the back. I want to see everything, every last closet. I smiled. Hazel, as always, was full of energy. In her 70s, she looked 60. A trim figure, a short haircut with a fashionable blue hue, brightly colored clothes. She always said that the secret of her youth was that she kept herself sour. Let's go. I took her hand. The living room first. We walked around the first floor, the living room with a fireplace, the dining room, the kitchen with an island in the middle, the study, the guest bathroom. Then we went up to the second floor where the bedrooms were. My God, Pamela, there are 6 bedrooms, Hazel marveled, looking into each room. Why do you need so many? One for me, one for guests. I shrugged. The rest? I don't know. Maybe I'll set up a library in one of them. Or a craft room. What about this one? Hazel opened the door to a small room next to the kitchen on the first floor. What's going to be in here? This is the former servants' quarters, I explained. They don't have them anymore. But when this house was built in the 50s, it was customary for the housekeeper to have a separate room next to the kitchen. It would make a great dressing room. Hazel nodded. Or a pantry. I woke up early the next day and couldn't bring myself to get out of bed. It was unusually quiet in the new bedroom, no noise from the street, no creaking of old pipes, just the birds singing outside the window. Finally, I got up and began to get ready for my guests. I wanted everything to be perfect. I baked an apple pie, Rowan's favorite dessert since childhood, prepared a meat stew that had been languishing in the oven for a long time, filling the house with delicious smells, and set the dining room table with my best service. Hazel arrived around noon, helped with the final preparations, and even brought a bouquet of fresh flowers for the center table. They should arrive by 2, I said, glancing nervously at the clock. It was almost 2. Relax, Pamela. Hazel patted my shoulder. Everything's gonna be okay. At 2:45, I heard the sound of a car pulling up. I looked out the window and saw Rowan's silver sedan parked in front of the house. They're here, I said to Hazel, feeling my heart start to beat faster. Remember, she whispered to me, this is your home and your life. I nodded and went to open the door. Rowan got out of the car first, followed by his wife Delia and their 2 children, Nina, who was 15, and Kevin, who had recently turned 13. They all stood looking at the house with different expressions on their faces. Rowan looked frowning, Delia looked surprised, and the children looked intrigued. "Grandma!" Kevin exclaimed, the first to see me on the doorstep. He ran over and gave me a big hug. "Is this your new house? It's huge." "Yes, dear." I kissed the top of his head, breathing in the scent of his hair. "It's been so long since I've seen my grandchildren. 3 months at least. Do you like it? It's amazing. Do you have a pool?" "I do," I smiled. "In the backyard. You can check it out later." Nina came over to us, more reserved than her younger brother. She hugged me and said, "Hi, Grandma. Nice house." "Thanks, honey." Finally, Rowan and Delia came up. My son looked exactly like his father at the same age, the same dark hair with graying at the temples, the same brown eyes, the same nose with a slight hunch. Only his expression was different. Alan's was always optimistic, while Rowan's eyes were often filled with discontent. "Mom," he hugged me briefly, "this place is impressive." "Pamela, what a lovely house." Delia smiled, but her eyes remained cold. She was always polite to me, but I sensed that behind that politeness lurked a dislike. We spent the next hour showing our guests around the house. The kids were delighted with the pool and garden. Delia marveled at the kitchen and closets, and Rowan walked silently from room to room, occasionally asking questions about the price of repairs or utility bills. When we returned to the living room, I offered everyone drinks. The kids asked for lemonade, Hazel and I chose white wine, and Rowan poured himself a whiskey. "How much does it cost to run a house like this a month?" he asked, taking a big gulp. "Rowan," Delia nudged him lightly with her elbow. "Not now. Why not now?" "Dash," he shrugged. "It's an important question. Mom has always been a practical woman, and suddenly such an extravagance. I felt my shoulders tense. I have enough money to support this house, Rowan, I said calmly. I've got it all figured out. Of course, of course. He nodded, but there was doubt in his voice. It's just amazing that you've decided to spend all your savings on real estate. Not all of it, I said. I still have some money left. And I have a good pension. Still, he took another sip of whiskey. I thought it was better to have a financial safety cushion at your age. Anything could happen. At her age, Hazel interjected, it's better to enjoy life, not save up for a rainy day that may never come. Rowan gave her a disgruntled look, but made no reply. Over lunch, the conversation became a little lighter. We discussed the kids' school, Rowan's work, the new novel I'd recently read. Hazel talked about her plans for the cruise, and even Delia, usually reserved, perked up, asking about the itinerary and excursions. But as Rowan continued to drink, first whiskey, then wine for dinner, and then whiskey again for dessert, his mood changed. He became more and more abrupt, his remarks more and more barbed. So you're a rich homeowner now, Mother, he said when I served dessert. Who'd have thought it? And here I thought Delia and I had it pretty good with our modest three-bedroom house. Your house is beautiful, Rowan, I said, trying to ignore his tone. And it's perfect for your family. Yeah, but it's not in the upscale neighborhood of Culver City, he grinned. And we don't have a pool. The kids will probably want to spend all their weekends here now. They're always welcome, I smiled. I'd like to see them more often. Sure, sure, he waved his hand. It's always nice to see your savings splashed all over the pool. Rowan! Delia pulled him back. Stop it. But he couldn't stop now. No, seriously, Mom. You've always talked about the importance of saving, always taught me to save for the future. You can't spend more than you earn. How often did I hear that as a kid? And now you're buying a mansion that costs, how much? $1 million? $1.5 million? Rowan, my voice got harder. It's my money and I decide how I spend it. Of course you do. He laughed, but there was no mirth in his laugh. Your money. Except that when I needed $5,000 to fix the roof last year, you said it wasn't a good time to spend it. Now it turns out it's a good time to buy a mansion. I could feel the color flooding down my cheeks. Yes, I'd turned him down for money to fix the roof after I'd learned that he and Delia had just returned from a week-long vacation in Hawaii. Pamela bought that house for herself, Hazel interjected. After decades of taking care of others, she finally decided to take care of herself. What's wrong with that? Nothing, Rowan shrugged. Absolutely nothing. I just wonder what will be left for the children and grandchildren after such self-care. This is it. The thing I'd been dreading. The inheritance. Money he already thought was his. Rowan, I tried to speak calmly. I'm not gonna die anytime soon, and I don't have to deprive myself of the comfort of old age to leave you more money. Comfort? He laughed. It's not comfort, Mother. It's luxury. 6 bedrooms. What do you need 6 bedrooms for? You have one. One of them is for guests, I began. Oh, guests, he interrupted. Do you have a lot of guests, Mom? Is Hazel going to live with you? Or are you planning on having a boyfriend? Rowan, Delia and I exclaimed at the same time. What? He threw up his hands. I'm just asking. Why would a lonely old woman need such a huge house? It's not logical. Not everything in life has to be logical, Hazel said. Sometimes people just want to please themselves. Pleasure, Rowan repeated. Yes, of course. You can make yourself happy with a new dress or a weekend trip. Not a mansion that's going to eat up all your savings. The kids came back from the street, wet and happy, and that lightened the mood a bit. We served them dessert, and the conversation turned to other topics. But I could see that Rowan was still seething with anger, even though he was trying to hold back in front of the kids. After dessert, Hazel volunteered to show the kids the garden, and Delia went to help me with the dishes in the kitchen. Rowan stayed in the dining room, pouring himself another whiskey. When we returned to the dining room, Rowan had finished almost the entire bottle of whiskey. His eyes were slightly unfocused, his movements clumsy. "Ah, there you are," he said when he saw us. "Mom, I've been thinking. Since you have such a huge house now, why don't you move us all in? We could be one big happy family." "Rowan," Delia started, but he interrupted her. "No, seriously. Why do we have to pay the mortgage when Mum's got a whole mansion to live in? I can take the master bedroom. You and the kids can take the other bedrooms upstairs." He turned to me and added with a smirk, "And you, Mom, will sleep in the maid's room." He laughed loudly, and to my surprise, Delia giggled too, covering her mouth with her hand. I froze, feeling something inside me break. All these years I'd thought I was sacrificing myself for my son out of love, and all he saw in it was money. Money he thought was his. What? Not funny? Rowan was still laughing. "Come on, Mom. It's a joke. It's not a bad idea, though, is it? The servants' quarters would be just right for you. Small, modest, away from the main rooms. Just the way you always liked it." "Rowan!" Delia's finally stopped laughing. "Stop it. It's not funny anymore." But he wasn't listening. "No, really, Mom. Why do you need such a big house? Let's switch. Me and my family can move here, and you can move into our house. It's just right for a single old woman, or the maid's room. Take your pick." He laughed again, and there was something evil, unkind in his laughter. I looked at my son, the man I'd raised, the man I'd given everything to, and I didn't recognize him. When had he become like that? Or had he always been like that, and I just didn't want to see it? I sat there, not saying a word, just looking at him. Hazel returned with the kids, and sensing the tension in the air, announced that it was time for them to go home. Delia quickly agreed, thanking them for lunch and dragging Rowan towards the exit. When they left, I was still sitting at the table, unmoving. Hazel crouched down next to me, taking my hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded slowly. Outwardly, I was calm, but inside, something was inexorably changing. In that moment, I made a decision. Rowan had gone too far. I stayed up all night. I lay in my new bedroom, staring at the ceiling and replaying last night over and over in my head. Rowan's words, "You'll sleep in the servants' room," and his laughter, and Delia's laughter, rang in her ears. When the first rays of sunlight began to break through the curtains, I already knew what I had to do. I got up, showered, and dressed myself with the utmost care. I put on my best suit, a dark blue, austere suit that I usually saved for special occasions. Today was just such an occasion. At 8 in the morning, I dialed a number I hadn't dialed in years. Barton Allred. A deep male voice answered after the third ring. "Barton, this is Pamela Whitby," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry for the early call." "Pamela." There was surprise and, I thought, joy in his voice. "What a pleasant surprise. How are you?" "I'm fine," I answered. "Barton, I need your help. Professional help." There was a pause, and I could almost see him straightening in his chair, switching from a friendly tone to a businesslike one. "Of course," he said finally. "What's the matter? I'd rather discuss it in person. Could you come tonight?" Today, he paused, obviously reviewing his schedule. "I have a window from 11 to 1 o'clock." "Perfect," I said. "I've moved, so here's my new address," I said. When I hung up the phone, there was a strange lightness inside, like I'd shed a weight I'd been carrying around for years. A load of expectation, of sacrifice, of blind motherly love. I ate breakfast, then tidied up the house, even though it was fine as it was. I just needed something to keep my hands busy. At 10:55, I heard the doorbell ring. Barton Allred hadn't changed much since the last time I'd seen him. He was still the same tall, thin man with a neatly trimmed gray beard and shrewd gray eyes. Only there were more wrinkles, and his back was a little hunched. Still, he was 75. Pamela, he smiled, kissing my cheek. You look beautiful. You too, Bart. I gestured him into the house. Come on in. He came in, looking around with undisguised admiration. Impressive place, he said, and I remembered that Rowan had said the same thing yesterday, but in a different tone of voice. Thank you. I led him into the study, where tea and cookies were ready. Have a seat. Barton sat down in the chair opposite me, resting his worn leather briefcase on his lap. So, he said, what can I do for you? I took a deep breath. Dash, I want to change the will. He nodded, not showing surprise. After all, he'd been a lawyer for almost 50 years and had seen all sorts of things. Okay, how? I want to disinherit Rowan, I said bluntly. Now Barton looked surprised. He'd known Rowan since he was a kid, had been a family friend since Alan was alive. It's a big decision, he said carefully. Did something happen? Yes, I nodded, and I'm going to tell you everything, but first I need to know, is it legally possible? Can I disinherit my son? Yes, Barton answered. It is your property, and you have the right to dispose of it as you see fit. There is no law in California that requires you to leave anything to your children. But Pamela, this is a very serious step. Are you sure? Not yet, I said honestly, but I want to know my options, and there's something else. I told him my plan. His eyebrows rose higher with each word. Do you realize that this is, rather unusual? He asked when I was done, and potentially risky. I understand, I nodded. But is it legally possible? It is, he said slowly, with certain caveats. But I need to know why, Pamela. Why do you want to do it? So I told him about how I'd spent my life saving money, denying myself everything for my son, how Rowan took it for granted, about last night and what he said about the maid's room, the laughter. When I finished, Barton was silent for a long moment, tapping his fingers on the arm of the chair. I understand, he said at last, and I'll help you, but I must warn you, it won't be easy, both emotionally and legally. I'm ready, I said firmly. We spent the next 2 hours discussing the details. Barton took notes, asked clarifying questions, sometimes shook his head, but he didn't try to talk me out of it. He knew me well enough to know that if I had made up my mind, I would stand my ground. I'll need to prepare some documents, he said, closing his notebook. I'll send them to you for your signature within the week, and then we'll meet to discuss the next step. When he left, I felt strangely relieved. The plan was set in motion. I didn't call Rowan that same day. I needed time to think it over, to be sure, and I also wanted to get the papers from Barton. They came 5 days later, a thick envelope delivered by courier. Inside was a new will in which all my assets, except for a few small amounts for grandchildren, went to a charity supporting single mothers, an irony Alan would appreciate. There was also a deed of gift of the house with special terms. The terms were complex with lots of legal terms, but the gist of it was simple. The house passed into Rowan's ownership for a certain period of time and subject to certain conditions. If the conditions were broken, the house came back to me. I signed the papers and sent them back to Barton. And then I dialed Rowan's number. Mom? He sounded surprised. We hadn't spoken since the last time I saw him. How are you? Fine, thanks, I said, trying to keep my voice normal. Rowan, I wanted to talk to you. It's important. Is something wrong? There was alarm in his voice. He was my son, after all, and somewhere deep inside him there was still concern for me. or his inheritance. No, nothing bad. It's just that I've been thinking a lot since your visit. Dash. Ah, he said uncertainly. About that. Mom, I wanted to apologize. I had too much to drink and said some stupid things. It's okay, I said, even though it wasn't true. I'm not offended. In fact, I wanted to talk to you about what you said, that you could live in my house. Mom, I was just kidding, he said quickly. Delia and I are very happy with our home. I know, but your words made me think. I paused. Rowan, this house is really too big for me alone. And frankly, I'm not sure I can keep it in order. What do you mean? There's interest in his voice. I'm thinking about giving it to you, I said bluntly. You and your family. You could move in here, and I could find something smaller, more suitable for a single woman my age. There was a long pause. I could almost see him trying to figure out if there was a catch in what I was saying. Are you serious? He asked at last. Absolutely, I answered. But, of course, we need to talk about the details. Could you come tomorrow? Alone, without Delia and the kids. It would be a business conversation. Sure, he said, as if he were afraid to spook his luck. What time? 11 o'clock. And, Rowan, I'll bring my lawyer. I hope you don't mind. Lawyer? There was a renewed wariness in his voice. Why? It's a serious matter, darling. The transfer of real estate. It needs to be handled properly. Oh, I see, he said, relaxing again. Yes, of course. See you tomorrow, Mom. I hung up and stared at the phone for a long time. His voice sounded in my head, so excited at the prospect of a house. Didn't ask where I was going to live. Didn't ask if I was sure. Just, are you serious? The next day, Barton arrived first, 20 minutes before the appointed time. We sat in his office, going over the final details. Are you sure, Pamela? He asked. It's not too late to cancel. I'm sure, I nodded. He must realize that everything has a price. Rowan arrived at 11 sharp. He was dressed in his best suit, like he was going to an important business meeting, which in fact was true. Mom, he kissed my cheek. You look good. Thank you, darling. I smiled. Do you remember Barton Allred? He was a good friend of your father's. Of course. Rowan shook the lawyer's hand. It's good to see you, Mr. Allred. You too, Rowan. Barton nodded. You've grown up like your father. We went into the office where the papers were laid out. Now, Barton began, your mother has expressed a wish to give this house to you, Rowan. That's a very generous gesture. Rowan nodded, his eyes glistening with excitement. Yes, I'm very grateful. It's an amazing gift. But, as you realize, such expensive real estate requires certain legal formalities, Barton continued. We've prepared a deed of gift with some conditions. Conditions? Rowan frowned. What kind of conditions? Nothing out of the ordinary, I interjected with a smile. Just some guarantees for me. For example, I'd like the right to use the pool and garden whenever I want. Ah, Rowan relaxed. Of course, Mom. You'll always be welcome. There are a few more points. Barton pushed the document toward Rowan. It's all laid out here. I recommend you read it carefully before you sign it. But Rowan was already reaching for a pen. I trust, Mom, he said with a smile. Where do I sign? Barton showed him where to sign, and Rowan signed quickly, almost without looking at the text. I watched him and wondered if he'd even ask where I was going to live. Wouldn't ask about the price of the house, about taxes, about anything other than where to sign. But he didn't. He signed all the papers Barton slipped him, smiling like a kid who'd gotten a long-awaited Christmas present. That's it, Barton said, gathering up the signed papers. Congratulations, Rowan. You are now the owner of this beautiful home. With some reservations, of course. Thank you. Rowan clearly wasn't listening to the last part of that sentence. He turned to me. Mom, I don't know what to say. It's, it's incredible. Delia's going to love it. I'm glad, I smiled. Dash, I hope you'll be happy here. When do you plan to move out? He asked, and there was no embarrassment or regret in his voice, only impatience. By the end of the month, I answered. I need to find a suitable apartment. Sure, he nodded. There's no rush. We can move in when it's convenient for you. But his eyes were saying something else. They said, I can't wait. When Rowan left, Barton and I stayed in the study. He didn't even read what he was signing. Barton shook his head. And he didn't ask where you were going to live. I know, I said quietly. That's what Rowan's all about. And yet, Pamela, Barton looked at me seriously. Are you sure you want to follow through? He's your son. I nodded. That's exactly why. He needs to be taught a lesson, and I'm the only one who can do it. That same night, Rowan called me, excited, happy. Mom, Delia, and I are thinking of moving in next week. Isn't that too soon? No, I said. I've already started looking for an apartment. I think I can move in by next weekend. That's great. He didn't even try to hide his joy. We've already had a realtor look at our house. He's coming tomorrow. So soon? I was surprised. Have you already decided to sell? Of course, he exclaimed. Why do we need two properties? Besides, the money from the sale will help us with the furnishings of the new house. We want to replace the kitchen cabinets. They're a little outdated, and maybe remodel the master bath. As I listened to him plan to remodel the house I'd bought with so much love, I could feel the coldness growing inside, but along with it was determination. I'm doing the right thing. By the way, Mom, Rowan said suddenly, could you lend us some money for the renovations? We'll pay it back as soon as we sell our house. I didn't answer right away. After all, he'd gotten a house worth $1.5 million. He's asking for more money? I'm afraid that's impossible, I said at last. All my savings went into buying the house. But you must have something left, he insisted. And besides, you don't have to spend money on a place to live. Rowan, I said, my voice hardening, I just gave you a house worth $1.5 million. I think you can find the money to fix it up yourself. Sure, he agreed quickly, but I could hear the disappointment in his voice. I just thought that if you had some money to spare, I don't have any spare cash, I said firmly. And, Rowan, I'd like you to leave my furniture where it is until I move it into the new apartment, especially the piano. It's dear to me as a memento. Of course, Mom, he said. But to be honest, we were planning to buy new furniture. Well, it's not really our style, not their style. The antique piano Alan and I bought for our wedding anniversary. The dining room table where generations of our family have grown up. The armchair where Alan liked to read in the evenings. I'll take everything, I said sharply. Every single item. As you wish, Rowan said, clearly surprised by my tone. It's your furniture. When we finished talking, I sat staring at the phone for a long time. What was I feeling? Anger, disappointment, sadness, all of them, I guess, but also something akin to liberation. I finally saw my son for who he was, without the rose-colored glasses of maternal love. The next day, Rowan sent me pictures of his house for sale. The realtor said we will easily get $800,000, he wrote, and not a word about what I would do, where I would live. That same night, I saw Delia's social media post, getting ready to move into our awesome new home. So excited. And a picture of their family in front of my, now their house. Not a word about me, not a hint of where the house came from. 2 days later, Rowan called again, even more excited. Mom, we already have a potential buyer for the house. They want to look at it tomorrow, And you know what? They're willing to pay even more than we asked for. Congratulations, I said, trying to make my voice sound sincere. That's wonderful, yes. He was so happy that he didn't notice my mood. We had already started packing. Delia has ordered new furniture for the living room, and the children have already chosen which rooms they want. And have you decided what to do with the maid's room? I asked, unable to resist. Oh, he looked a little embarrassed. I think we'll make it a storage room or maybe a gym. It's too small for a bedroom, but big enough for your mother, I thought, but kept silent. Anyway, he continued, I was wondering when you plan on getting your stuff. We'd like to start renovating as soon as possible. I found an apartment, I said. I'll move my stuff in this Saturday if that's okay with you. Perfect, he exclaimed. We plan to move in on Sunday. No, take your time, or you need help. Just impatience to take over my house as soon as possible. Okay, I said. I'll see you Saturday then. I hung up the phone and looked at the papers on the table. The very ones Rowan had so carelessly signed without reading. The documents that would change everything in a month. Barton was right. It was a risky plan and emotionally difficult. But looking at how easily Rowan had accepted my gift, how quickly he'd begun to manage the house without thinking about me, I was more and more convinced that I'd made the right decision. My son needed to learn a lesson, and he would get it. I never thought I'd have to move again at my age, much less in a hurry and in secret. But that was the situation. Rowan was so eager to take possession of the house that I had to act quickly and stealthily. I found the apartment almost immediately. It was small but bright and cozy, on the second floor of an old brick house in a quiet neighborhood in Culver City. Two windows overlooked a small park, and on the other side, I could see a cozy street with coffee shops and small stores. Not at all like my luxurious mansion, but I liked her right away. Something about it reminded me of when Alan and I had just gotten married and rented a small apartment in the suburbs, where we'd been happy despite the cramped quarters and modest furnishings. I arranged with the owner to move in right away, put down a deposit and the first month's rent. Luckily, Barton helped expedite the formalities. Are you sure you want this apartment? He asked, looking around the place with slight concern. The bathroom needs renovation, and the kitchen is too small. It suits me, I said, touching the old wallpaper with its faded pattern of small flowers. It's cozy. Barton shook his head but didn't argue. He knew this apartment was part of my plan, a temporary home, nothing more. On Friday, the day before the move was official, I called Hazel. I need your help, I said, and your pickup truck. It's all yours, she replied without further question. When? Tonight, I said. Rowan and his family are gone until tomorrow, looking at some furniture for the new house. It's our chance. A chance for what? Hazel's voice sounded slightly worried. Pamela, what are you up to? I'll tell you when I see you, I replied. Come at 6. When Hazel arrived in her old red pickup truck, I had already packed the essentials. Clothes, personal items, a few memorabilia. Not much, considering all the furniture, dishes, books, and more were still in the house. Are you going to run away? Hazel asked, looking at my bags. Not really, I smiled. I'm just taking the most important things. The rest can wait until tomorrow, when Rowan's here. And what exactly are you up to? Hazel crossed her arms over her chest. Dash, I know that look, Pamela. You're up to something. I sighed and invited her to sit down. We settled in the living room, and I told her everything about the meeting with Barton, about the change in the will, about the deed of gift with special conditions, about the plan to teach Rowan a lesson. Hazel listened without interrupting. Only her eyes grew wider with every word I said. Pamela Whitby, she said at last. You are a brilliant, conniving woman. I've always known it. Don't you think that's too much? I asked, still hesitant despite my resolve to act. Too much? Hazel laughed. After he offered to let you sleep in the servants' quarters? After he rushed to sell his house without even asking where you were going to live? No, my dear, it's not too much. It's just right. I was relieved. Hazel had always been my moral compass, even though many people thought she was too direct and abrupt. Would you help me move my things then? I asked. I want Rowan to think like I'm still here when they move. Let him realize he didn't even notice I was gone. I'd love that, Hazel nodded. And I'll be there for him when the day of reckoning comes. I don't want to miss the look on his face. We loaded my bags into the pickup and drove them to the new apartment. It looked empty and a little drab without furniture, but I knew that would change soon. Everything important to me was tucked away in a special storage unit: family photos, jewelry, documents. From there, they could be retrieved at any time when it was all over. So, where are you going to sleep? Hazel asked, looking around the empty room. On the floor? I got a motel room for a couple days, I said. Then I'll buy the essentials: a sofa bed, a table, a couple chairs. Nonsense, Hazel said. I have a spare bedroom. You'll stay with me until you're settled in. And don't argue, she added, seeing that I was about to object. It's out of the question. I smiled, tears of gratitude welling up in my eyes. Thank you, I said quietly. You're welcome, she hugged me. That's what friends are for. We went back inside, made sure everything looked as normal, and left, locking the door. I'll see you back here tomorrow, I said. The official move, with movers and everything. I can't wait, Hazel smirked. It's going to be an interesting day. I spent the night at Hazel's house, in the small but cozy guest room. I slept badly, waking up every hour and thinking about what I was doing. Is this the right thing to do? Was it too cruel? But then I remembered Rowan's words, his laughter, Delia's laughter, and the doubts receded. He chose this path for himself. Hazel and I arrived at the house early this morning. The movers were due to arrive by 9, and Rowan and his family would arrive closer to noon. We had plenty of time to pick up everything I wanted. The movers worked quickly and efficiently, loading into the van the furniture I had noted in advance: an antique piano, a dining table, Alan's chair, bookcases, some art, anything that had sentimental value to me or was simply dear to me. Where's it all going? The senior loader asked when the van was full. To what address? To the vault, I answered, handing him the paper with the address on it. Everything except this one. I pointed to a small stack of boxes. That's coming with me. The boxes contained dishes, linens, some clothes, and books, the bare minimum to get started in a new place. The movers left around 11, and Hazel and I were left in a half-empty house. I went through the rooms, checking to see if I'd forgotten anything important. There was still a bed in the bedroom, a couch and TV in the living room, and a refrigerator and stove in the kitchen, enough to keep Rowan from suspecting anything out of the ordinary. What now? Hazel asked as we got into her pickup with the last of the boxes. Now we wait, I replied. Let Rowan and his family move in. Let them think I'm still here somewhere, in my room or out shopping. Let them not notice my absence. And when will they notice? With any luck, not until a couple days from now. I smiled. Rowan was too busy with his new property to think about me. We drove the boxes to my new apartment and decided to have lunch at a small cafe nearby. I ordered a salad, but I couldn't eat half of it. My stomach twisted with nervous tension. Are you okay? Hazel asked, watching me pick at my plate. I don't know, I admitted honestly. Part of me feels like I'm doing the right thing, and the other part of me, another part of me, says I'm a terrible mother. You're not a terrible mother, Hazel said firmly. You've just finally put boundaries in place. This is a healthy relationship, Pamela. Healthy for both of you. I nodded, Though I wasn't entirely convinced, it was one thing to set boundaries and quite another to set a trap for my son. But it was too late to back out. The plan was set in motion. After lunch, we drove back to the house and parked on a nearby street where we could see the driveway. Soon, a large moving truck showed up, followed by Rowan's car. We watched them unload the stuff, Delia commanding the movers, the children running around the garden shouting happily. They looked happy, excited, full of plans. "They don't even come into my room," I remarked when 2 hours had passed and none of them had gone up to the second floor in the east wing, where I had left some of my things for visibility. "They really don't notice my absence." "I told you." Hazel shook her head. "To them, you're just inventory, part of the house they got." I felt something clench in my chest. It was painful to see my son, my only child, completely uninterested in where I was or what was wrong with me. But it also strengthened my resolve. We sat in the car until evening, watching the movie. When it got dark, the house lights came on, and through the big living room windows, I could see Rowan and his family settled on my couch, watching TV, drinking wine, laughing. "Let's go," I said to Hazel. I'd seen enough. She nodded and started the engine. We drove slowly away from the house I had bought with so much love and given away so easily. But it was only an appearance. Rowan didn't know it yet, but the house was still mine, and he would soon find out. I spent the next 2 days at Hazel's house, helping her with the garden and trying not to think about Rowan. We bought the essentials for my new apartment: a sofa bed, a table, a couple chairs, lamps. Not much, but enough to start a new life. On the third day, I noticed a few missed calls from Rowan. I didn't call back. I wanted to see how long it would take for him to really start worrying. By late afternoon, the calls had increased to include messages like, "Mom, where are you? Call me." "Mom, we can't find you. Are you okay?" "Mom, this isn't funny anymore. Where are you?" "Looks like he finally noticed your absence," Hazel said, looking at my phone screen. 3 days. Impressive powers of observation. He was probably only looking for me because they needed some item or information about the house, I said, putting the phone away. Not because he was worried about me. Are you going to answer him? Not right now. I shook my head. Let him worry a little more. By the next morning, Rowan started calling Hazel, but she didn't answer, following our plan. "He left a voicemail," Hazel said, checking her phone. "He sounds really concerned." "Can I listen to it?" I asked. She put it on speakerphone. "Hazel, this is Rowan. I can't find my mom. Her stuff is still at the house, but she hasn't been here for days. She's not answering her phone. Do you have any idea where she is? Please call me back." "He noticed your stuff was still there, but he didn't notice that a lot of it was gone." Hazel shook her head. "That's amazing." "He was never very observant," I said, "not even as a kid." By noon, the calls had become more insistent. Rowan called every half hour, leaving increasingly disturbing messages. I finally decided it was time to put an end to his misery and sent a short text message. "I'm fine. Don't worry. Talk to you later." A minute later, he called back, and this time I answered. "Mom." He sounded relieved and annoyed at the same time. "Where are you? We're going crazy with worry." "I'm staying at Hazel's," I said calmly. "I thought I'd give you guys time to settle in without me." "Dash Hazel?" He sounded surprised. "But your things are still here." "Not all of it," I pointed out. "I took most of it on Saturday when you guys came over." "Saturday?" He paused, obviously trying to remember. "But we didn't see you, and no movers." "Of course we didn't," I said. "We were finished before you arrived." "But, why didn't you tell us? Why did you sneak away? What was I supposed to say, Rowan?" Hi, I'm leaving because you didn't even bother to ask where I was going to live after you took my house. Mom, he sounded annoyed. You're the one who offered us the house. You said you'd find something smaller. And I did, I said. A little apartment on Oak Street. But you never asked about it, Rowan. You never once asked where I was going to live, if I needed help moving, if I needed money. I thought, he hesitated, I thought you'd organized everything. Of course I did, I said. I always organize everything myself, Rowan, all my life, because no one else seems to care what happens to me. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, and for a second I thought he was really thinking about what I'd said. But then he said, Mom, you're being dramatic. Of course we care about what's going on with you. We've just been busy moving. So busy that you didn't notice my absence for 3 days? I asked. Rowan, at least be honest with yourself. You only noticed I was gone when you needed something, right? What was it? The code to the alarm system? Information about watering the garden? Pause again. And I realized I'd hit the mark. Look, he said at last, we did want to ask about the watering system, but that doesn't mean. It does, Rowan, I interrupted him. That's exactly what it means. You got the house, and I was no longer needed. I became an inconvenience. Mom, he exclaimed. How can you say that? It's easy, I said, because it's true. But you know what? It's okay. I'm used to it. I'll manage on my own, like I always do. You're being unfair. His voice turned cold. We're very grateful for the house. We just thought you'd let us know when you were ready to move in. I did let you know, I said. It's just that you didn't notice. I hung up the phone feeling strangely satisfied. Rowan hadn't noticed my absence until the third day, and only because he wanted information about the house. That spoke for itself. Well? Asked Hazel, who had heard the whole conversation. How are you feeling? Strange, I replied. Sad, but also liberated, as if I'd finally seen the truth I'd long refused to see. And what is that truth? That my son loves not me, but what I can give him, I said quietly. Money, a house, favors, but not me. Hazel nodded without saying a word. She had known this for a long time, but she was a good enough friend not to say, I told you so. That night we moved the rest of my stuff into my new apartment. It still looked empty and uncomfortable, but it was starting to take on some of the characteristics of home. My books on the shelves, my pictures on the walls, my old plaid on the couch. Will you stay the night? Hazel asked, helping to set up the dishes. I can sleep on the couch. No, I shook my head. It's time for me to start living on my own. But thanks for the offer. When Hazel left, I sat in the quiet of my new apartment, looking out the window at the small park across the street. Old trees, benches, children playing under the supervision of their parents. Ordinary life that goes on regardless of our personal dramas. I thought about Rowan, about how he grew up, about our happy moments, about when and where things went wrong. Maybe I was letting him get away with too much. Maybe I was trying to compensate for his father's absence with material things. Or maybe he's just that kind of person, selfish, thinking only of himself. Either way, it was too late to change anything. The plan was set in motion, and in a few weeks, Rowan would get his lesson. I just hoped that this lesson wouldn't destroy the last vestiges of our relationship. But even if it did, I was ready. For the first time in years, I wasn't acting like a mother sacrificing herself for her son, but like a woman defending her dignity. And it felt right. The days in my new apartment stretched slowly. I tried to get used to the new place, to organize it to my liking, to create some semblance of a home. I bought some plants, hung curtains, arranged books on new shelves. But something still felt wrong, temporary, maybe because I knew it was temporary. Rowan called several times in the first week after we talked. First, he indignantly demanded an explanation for my dramatic disappearance. Then he tried to apologize, clumsily, not entirely sincerely. Finally, he invited me to dinner at my former home. To set things right, he said. I declined, citing busyness. I wasn't ready to see them remodeling my house to suit themselves, throwing out my stuff, changing the things I'd chosen so lovingly. After I said no, the calls became less frequent and then stopped altogether. Only occasionally did Delia send formal messages, pictures of the kids with the caption, "Miss you, Grandma?" or invitations to family dinners, which I politely but firmly declined. They seemed to take my absence for granted. I ceased to be needed when I gave them the house. Hazel stopped by almost every day, bringing home-cooked meals, fresh gossip, and her inexhaustible energy. She was the only one who knew about my plan completely and was eagerly awaiting the denouement. "Saw them at the supermarket today," she said one day, sprawled out on my new couch. Delia was picking out wine, and Rowan was following her around like he was being led to his execution. God, how could Alan have produced such a bore? He wasn't always like that, I sighed, pouring the tea. Rowan had been a sweet, caring boy as a child. Somewhere along the way, something went wrong. You know what? Hazel propped herself up on an elbow. I think it's the money. Money changes people, especially easy money. Maybe, I nodded, remembering how I'd started giving Rowan everything he asked for after Alan died. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I'd created this selfish man who couldn't think of anyone but himself. Time passed. I found new activities. I signed up for art classes, started a book club at the local library, even joined a group of elderly volunteers helping out at the animal shelter. Life went on, and I almost convinced myself that I could be happy in this new reality, even if my plan didn't work out. And then, exactly 1 month after Rowan moved into my house, the phone rang. "Pamela?" Barton's voice sounded businesslike, but with a hint of satisfaction. "I have news." "Good news or bad news?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Depends on your point of view." He grinned. "The paperwork has been processed. The terms of the contract have been activated. The house is officially returned to you." I closed my eyes, feeling a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, satisfaction, and something akin to bitterness. When will Rowan find out? "The notice will be delivered this afternoon," Barton answered. "An official letter from my office explaining all the legal details. They'll have 2 weeks to evict." 2 weeks? I hesitated. "Isn't that a little harsh?" "It's standard under these circumstances," Barton said. "And frankly, Pamela, considering what they did to you, it's still very humane." "You're probably right," I sighed. "Are you all right?" He sounded worried. "If you want, you can call the whole thing off. It's not too late." I thought for a moment. Call it off? After everything that had happened? After what Rowan had said about the maid's room? After his hasty sale of his house? After the 3 days he hadn't even noticed my absence? "No," I said firmly. "We're going ahead with the plan." "Good." Barton's voice sounded approving. "I'll keep you informed. And, Pamela, be prepared. Rowan probably won't take this quietly." "I know," I replied. "I'm ready." I hung up the phone and sat still for a long time, staring out the window. What did I feel? Not triumph, not gloating, more like fatigue, tired of the whole situation, of having to teach my adult son simple things: respect, gratitude, caring for others. I called Hazel. "It's on," I said as soon as she answered. "Barton has sent the notice." "At last!" Hazel exclaimed. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. We need to celebrate." "I'm not sure there's anything to celebrate," I said quietly. "There is," she insisted. You finally stood up for yourself. That's worth celebrating. She arrived with a bottle of champagne and a container of homemade cookies. We sat on my little balcony, sipping champagne from teacups. I didn't have glasses yet, and waited for Rowan to call. He was going to call, we both knew it. And indeed, the phone rang around 3 in the afternoon. Rowan's name flashed on the screen. "Are you ready?" Hazel asked, looking at me anxiously. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but there's no choice." I took a deep breath and answered the phone. "What the hell is that?" Rowan's voice was literally vibrating with rage. "What eviction? This is our house." "Hello, Rowan," I said calmly. "I suppose you got a letter from Barton." "Yes, I got it." "What is this, Mom? Some kind of joke? A prank?" "No, it's not a prank," I replied calmly. "These are the terms of the contract you signed. It says clearly, the house is given to you for a certain period of time. 1 month and under certain conditions. Respectful treatment of the former owner. That is me. None of those conditions have been met." "What other conditions?" he yelled. "I didn't sign any of that." "Yes, you did, Rowan," I said. "Barton has the documents. You signed them without even reading them. You were in too much of a hurry to get the house. This is fraud," he exclaimed. "I'm gonna sue. You can't do that." "You can try," I replied. "But Barton is one of the best real estate lawyers in town. All the documents are in order. Everything's legal. You signed them yourself, Rowan. Your signature's on every page." There was silence on the phone. I could almost see him trying to make sense of the situation, his mind going over the options. "Mom," he finally said, and his voice changed. Softer, more pleading. "Mom, we're a family. Why are you doing this to us? We've already sold our house. We have nowhere to go. The kids are just getting used to their new school." "Stop it, Rowan," I said firmly. "It's not going to work. You sold your house without even asking me where I was going to live. You didn't notice my absence for 3 days. You offered me to sleep in the maid's room and laughed about it. It was a joke," he exclaimed. "Just a silly joke. I was drunk." "Maybe," I agreed. "But there's truth in every joke, Rowan. And the truth is, you don't respect me. You never have. I'm just a source of goods for you. Money, shelter, favors. Not a person with feelings and needs." "That's not true." His voice was shaking. "I love you, Mom." "You're my mother." "I know I'm your mother," I said. "And I love you too, Rowan. But love shouldn't be one-sided. Love shouldn't suck all the juices out of you and leave you an empty shell. I've given you everything your whole life. It's time to get something in return. Respect, at least. But eviction?" There was something akin to panic in his voice now. 2 weeks? "Mom, that's cruel. Where will we live? What am I going to tell the kids?" "You have the money from the sale of your house," I reminded him. "More than enough for a down payment on a new one or rent. You'll manage, Rowan. You always do." "I can't believe it," he said after a pause, his voice cold. "I can't believe you do this to your own son, to your own grandchildren. You? You're a monster." I flinched at those words, but I didn't let myself give in to emotion. "No, Rowan," I said quietly. "A monster is someone who takes a house from his own mother and offers to let her sleep in the servants' quarters. A monster is someone who doesn't notice his mother's absence for 3 days. A monster is someone who thinks he deserves everything without giving anything in return." "It was a joke," he shouted again. "How many times do I have to say it again?" "A joke, maybe," I said. Dis- but my actions are not a joke, Rowan. You have 2 weeks to vacate the house. After that, the locks will be changed. You'll regret this." His voice became threatening. "I swear you will." "Maybe," I said again, but my only regret now was that I hadn't done it sooner. Goodbye, Rowan. I hung up the phone feeling strangely empty. Not the joy of victory, not the satisfaction of revenge, just sadness and fatigue. Hazel silently handed me a cup of champagne. Are you all right? She asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. He called me a monster. He's wrong, Hazel said firmly. You're not a monster. You're just a man who's let himself be used for too long and who finally said enough is enough. I nodded, looking out the window at the small park across the street. Old trees, benches, children playing under the supervision of their parents. Ordinary life that went on regardless of our personal dramas. Do you think he's really leaving in 2 weeks? Hazel asked. He has no choice, I said. Barton made sure everything was legally flawless. If Rowan doesn't leave voluntarily, the bailiffs will come. What are you going to do with the house? I don't know, I shrugged. Maybe sell it. Maybe I'll rent it out. Maybe I'll go back there. I haven't decided yet. Well, you have 2 weeks to think about it. Hazel lifted her cup. Here's to you, Pamela. To your courage. I smiled weakly and clinked my cup with hers, but I didn't feel any triumph inside, only fatigue from the whole situation. Rowan called several more times that evening, but I didn't answer. What else was there to say? Everything had been said. Now all we had to do was wait. The next morning I woke up to a knock on the door. When I opened it, I saw Delia, pale, her eyes red with tears. May I come in? She asked quietly. I nodded and stepped back, letting her into the apartment. She looked around with undisguised surprise. Do you really live here? She asked. It's so easy. Yes, I answered. This is my apartment. To what do I owe the visit, Delia? She sat down on the couch, fidgeting nervously with the strap of her purse. Rowan's furious, she said at last. I've never seen him like this. He's yelling, hitting dishes, scaring the kids. He says he's going to sue, that you have no right to do this to us. He can try, I said calmly. But the papers are all in order. He signed them himself. But we already sold our house, Delia exclaimed. We don't have another place to live. We thought this house was ours now. It was yours, I said, under certain conditions, which you didn't honor. What conditions? She looked genuinely puzzled. Rowan hadn't said anything about conditions. Because he didn't read the contract before he signed it. I shrugged. Typical Rowan. Always in a hurry to make a profit without thinking about the consequences. Delia lowered her head. He said you made up some nonsense about us treating you badly. That's not true, Pamela. We've always respected you. Have we? I raised an eyebrow. Then why did you laugh at the idea of me sleeping in the servants' quarters? Why didn't you notice my absence for 3 days? Why didn't you once ask me where I was going to live after you moved into my house? Delia blushed and looked away. It was just a joke, and we were busy moving. Busy is no excuse for callousness, Delia, I said. You got a house worth $1.5 million and didn't even bother to ask if I needed help moving. That speaks for itself. She was silent, still not looking at me. What do you want, Delia? I finally asked. Why did you come here? Yeah. She took a deep breath. I came to ask you to change your mind. For the kids, they're just getting used to a new school, new friends. It would be so stressful for them to move again. I feel sorry for the kids, I said sincerely. But it's not my fault, Delia. It's Rowan's fault for not bothering to read the papers before he signed them. It's Rowan's fault for selling your house with no guarantee of a new one. It's the fault of Rowan, who doesn't know how to respect others, not even his own mother. But he's your son. Delia looked up at me with a look of bewilderment. How can you do this to him? Precisely because he's my son, I answered. Because I love him and I want him to be a better person. I want him to learn respect, gratitude, caring for others. It's a lesson, Delia. Painful, but necessary. A lesson, she repeated, and there was bitterness in her voice. At the expense of our future? At the expense of the children's future? You have the money from the sale of your house, I reminded her. You can buy or rent another one. It's not the end of the world, Delia. It's just an inconvenience. The very same inconvenience you so easily created for me without considering my feelings. She stood up, adjusting the strap of her bag. You're going to regret this, she said, echoing Rowan's words. We're a family. A family shouldn't do this to each other. Exactly, I nodded. A family shouldn't do this to each other, like you did to me. When she left, I sat still for a long time, staring at the closed door. Those words again. You'll be sorry. Maybe they were right. Maybe I really would regret my decision. But then I remembered Rowan's words, his laughter, his complete disregard for my feelings, and I realized, no, I wouldn't regret it. It was the right thing to do, albeit painful. Barton called that evening. Rowan's hired a lawyer, he said without preamble. They're trying to find a loophole in the contract. How? I asked, feeling my heart clench. Despite everything, I didn't want a long legal battle with my own son. No luck, Barton sounded professionally proud. The contract was impeccably drafted. They don't stand a chance. What now? Now they'll either leave voluntarily within 2 weeks or will sue for forced eviction, Barton said. But I don't think it will come to that. Rowan may be selfish, but he's not stupid. He'll realize he's losing and leave. I hope you're right, I sighed. How about you? He asked with unexpected warmth in his voice. Are you holding up? I'm hanging in there, I said. I wouldn't say it's easy, though. I know, he said, but you're doing the right thing, Pamela. Sometimes you have to be tough to teach a lesson. When we finished talking, I felt strangely calm. Yes, it had been hard. Yes, it was painful. But it was necessary. Not just for me, but for Rowan. Maybe this lesson would finally teach him to appreciate what he had and respect others. Maybe. 2 weeks passed in a strange daze. I hardly left the apartment for fear of running into Rowan or Delia. Hazel brought me groceries and news. They've started packing. Saw the movers moving furniture out. The moving van was pulling up to the house. I nodded, accepting the information, but trying not to think about what was going on. There was an emptiness inside, no joy or celebration, just fatigue and something akin to a vague sadness. Rowan had tried to contact me several times over the days, calling, texting. I hadn't responded. What else was there to say? Delia came by once more with the kids. They stood at my door with begging faces. Nina with tears in her eyes. Kevin with an expression of childish bewilderment. I didn't let them in, just said through the door, I'm sorry, but the decision has been made. Barton called regularly with updates. Rowan's lawyer offered various compromises, delayed eviction, partial payment of rent, but I remained adamant. Not out of revenge, not out of a desire to punish my son further, but out of a realization. Any concession now would invalidate the lesson. On the last day of the 2-week term, Barton arrived in person. They've moved out, he said as we sat in the small coffee shop across the hall from my apartment. I have the keys. The house is vacant. I nodded, stirring the sugar in the cup of coffee I wasn't going to drink. What were they like? I asked, not looking at Barton. He was quiet for a moment, searching for words. Angry, he said finally, especially Rowan. Delia was more confused, I guess. The kids are just sad. I nodded again, feeling a pang of guilt. The kids weren't to blame for their parents' actions. They were just caught up in the story. Where would they live? They've rented an apartment in West Hollywood, Barton answered. It's a pretty decent place, judging by the address. They're not on the street, Pamela. They'll be fine. I know, I said, but the guilt wouldn't go away. It's just, you did what you had to do, Barton said firmly. It was a necessary lesson for all of you. I nodded and took the envelope of keys he held out to me. Thank you, Bart, for everything. You're welcome, he smiled. What do you plan to do now? Are you going back to the house? I don't know, I answered honestly. I need to think about it. After Barton left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, staring at the envelope with the keys. What did I feel? Relief, sadness, triumph? It was hard to make sense of the emotions swirling inside. Hazel came in the evening with a bottle of wine and a box of chocolates. They moved out, she said, plopping down on my couch. I watched them load the last of their belongings into the van. Delia was crying. Rowan looked like he wanted to kill someone. Barton said they got an apartment in West Hollywood. I opened the bottle of wine, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Yeah, I know, Hazel nodded. Myrtle from the book club told me. Her nephew works for the same company as Rowan. He says he tells everyone that his mother is a heartless monster who threw his family out on the street. Well, that's to be expected. I poured the wine into cups. I still didn't have any glasses. Rowan would never admit his guilt. To hell with him, Hazel raised her cup. Here's to you, Pamela. Here's to your victory. I smiled weakly and raised my cup too, but inside I felt no victory, only fatigue and a strange desolation. Have you decided what you're going to do with the house? Hazel asked after a few sips of wine. No, I shook my head. Sell it, I guess. Too many memories. Memories aren't always bad, Hazel said. The house was your dream, remember? Before all this, you were so excited when you bought it. I remember the day I first walked into the house, the high ceilings, the big windows, the garden with the fruit trees. How I stood on the terrace imagining my morning coffee. How I planned to set up a library in one of the spare rooms. All those dreams trampled on by Rowan's words and his actions. I don't know if I could live there again, I admitted, after everything that's happened. You won't know until you try, Hazel shrugged. Maybe we should at least look at the condition of the house. See if they broke your favorite vase out of revenge? I grinned. It was so like Hazel to turn drama into a joke. Maybe tomorrow, I said. I'm not sure I have the energy today. But the next day, I pulled myself together and drove to the house. Hazel insisted on accompanying me. I don't know, she said. Maybe Rowan left a dead rat in your bed, like in The Godfather. I don't think he's seen that movie. I smiled. We pulled up to the house around noon. I sat in the car for a long time, hesitant to get out. The house looked exactly the same as it had before, big, elegant, with a well-kept garden. But now it was empty, as if the soul of the house had gone with its last inhabitants. Let's go, Hazel tapped me lightly on the shoulder. The longer you sit here, the scarier it's going to get. I nodded and got out of the car. My legs felt heavy as I walked down the walkway to the front door. My hand shook as I put the key in the lock. It was quiet and empty inside. Most of the furniture was gone. Apparently Rowan had decided to take back what he'd bought after all. The only things left were the old cabinets built into the walls and the kitchen appliances that had come with the house. We walked around the first floor in silence. In the living room, there were traces on the wall of paintings that had been removed. In the kitchen, there was a dirty cup in the sink, the last thing used before we left. In the dining room, a thin layer of dust covered the dining table. Not as bad as I expected, Hazel remarked, running her finger over the dusty surface. At least nothing was broken. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness, not just in the house, but inside myself. What was I feeling? looking at these rooms where I should have been happy, but where instead I'd experienced one of the biggest disappointments of my life. We went up to the second floor. The bedrooms were empty. Only one of them, the one Nina had used, had traces on the wall of posters that had been torn down in a hurry. In my former bedroom, I found a framed photograph. Me, Rowan, and Alan, all smiling for the camera. Rowan is about 10 years old, with freckles on his nose and a gap-toothed smile. Alan holds him tightly by the shoulder. I stand next to him, young, happy, without wrinkles or gray hair. Have they forgotten her? Or did they leave her behind on purpose? Hazel asked, looking over my shoulder. I don't know. I set the picture carefully on the dresser. Maybe it was both. We walked back down to the first floor. I stopped in the hallway looking around. What now? Sell the house and forget the whole thing? Or try to start over, create new memories that would override the old ones? What are you thinking about? Hazel asked, watching me. About what to do next, I answered honestly. And what have you decided? I took a deep breath. I don't want to sell the house. That's right, Hazel nodded vigorously. It's your house, Pamela, your dream. Don't let Rowan take it away from you. But I don't want to live here alone, I continued. Too many rooms, too much space for memories. Hazel was silent, waiting to see what I would say next. Remember when you said your landlord was raising the rent? I turned to her. And that since Fred died, you're lonely in that part of town? Hazel looked at me puzzled. Then her eyes widened with understanding. Pamela Whitby, are you suggesting that I move in with you? Yes, I nodded. There are 6 bedrooms in the house. There's enough room for us to stay out of each other's way. And frankly, I don't want to be alone. Not after all this. Hazel was silent for so long that I started to worry. Maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe she doesn't want to live with me. We've been friends for 40 years, but it's one thing to be friends and quite another to live together. Dash Hazel? I touched her arm tentatively. You don't have to say yes. It's just a suggestion. I accept, she said at last. Of course I do. Are you crazy? Living in this amazing house instead of my tiny apartment? With you, my best friend, it's a dream come true. I laughed, feeling the tension release. Then it settled. We'll live here together. But on one condition. Hazel held up a finger. No tears for Rowan. No, maybe I was too cruel. No, he's my son after all. He chose his own path. Now it's your turn to choose yours. I nodded, feeling something inside me change, realign. Yes, Rowan was my son. Yes, I loved him no matter what. But love shouldn't mean constant sacrifice. Love shouldn't be one-sided. I agree, I said firmly. No tears, just a new life. Hazel and I moved into the house a week later. During that time, I bought new furniture to replace the one Rowan had taken and took out of storage the old things that had value to me, the piano, Alan's chair, the family photos. Hazel brought her books, her vinyl record collection, and an antique desk she'd inherited from her mother. We assigned rooms. I took the bedroom in the east wing, not the one that used to be mine, and where Rowan later slept. Hazel chose the room overlooking the garden. We turned one of the spare bedrooms into a library and the other into a guest room, in case we had visitors. A month passed, and the house slowly began to take on a new life. Hazel brought her energy, her laughter, her music. We cooked dinners together, watched old movies, argued about books. On weekends, friends from the book club would come to visit, and the house would fill with voices, with laughter, with life. Rowan never called. I only knew of him from casual conversations. Someone saw him at the supermarket. Someone heard he was looking for a new house in another neighborhood. I didn't try to contact him, not out of pride or resentment, but out of understanding. Sometimes people need space to realize their mistakes. Sometimes the greatest act of love is to let go. 2 months after we moved in, Hazel Barton invited us over for dinner. He was pleasantly surprised by our decision to live together. A smart decision, he said as he poured us wine. The house is too big for one person, but it's perfect for two. And it's not just practicality, Hazel said. Pamela is fun. Who knew that quiet girl could sing so loudly at karaoke? I laughed, remembering our impromptu karaoke night last week. Hazel and I found an old music center with a karaoke function, and after a few glasses of wine, we put on a real concert. The neighbors must have been horrified. You look happy, Pamela, Barton said, looking at me carefully. Calmer than before. I feel happier, I admitted, and calmer, as if, like I'd let go of a weight I'd been carrying for years, the weight of guilt and obligation. Barton nodded. I know the feeling. But sometimes I still think about Rowan, I said quietly, about how things might have been different if he hadn't been such a selfish ass. Hazel finished for me. Pamela, we agreed, no ifs. What happened, happened. Now we look forward, not backward. I smiled. Hazel had always been straightforward, but that's what I liked about her. She wouldn't let me drown in regret and self-deprecation. You're right, I said. Only forward. After dinner, when we got home, I stood on the terrace for a long time, looking up at the night sky. Hazel joined me, holding out a cup of hot tea. What are you thinking about? She asked. About the future, I answered. About what I want to do next. What do you want to do? Travel, I said firmly. All my life I've been saving money, denying myself everything for Rowan. Now it's time to spend it on myself. I want to see Paris, Rome, Barcelona. I want to wake up in a strange city and just wander the streets. No plan, no purpose. Just live. That sounds amazing. Hazel smiled. When do we leave? I turned to her, surprised. You want to come with me? Did you think I was going to let you go alone? She laughed. No way. Someone has to get you out of museums and show you real life. Bars, clubs, handsome Frenchmen. I laughed, picturing me and Hazel in a Paris bar, flirting with the locals. The picture was absurd, but at the same time, why not? Why shouldn't we enjoy life to the fullest? I was 68, Hazel was 70, but we were healthy, full of energy, and, for the first time in a long time, free. Okay, I nodded. We'll go together, but no handsome French men. I've had enough of museums. We'll see, Hazel winked. Never say never. 2 weeks later, we booked tickets to Paris, then Rome, then Barcelona. The plan formed itself. 3 months of traveling around Europe, starting in the spring. We researched guidebooks, read blogs, argued about itineraries. I felt young, full of energy and plans. Life went on, without Rowan, without the constant guilt and commitment. I discovered I could be happy without a son who never really appreciated me. I discovered that true family isn't always blood relatives. Sometimes it's friends who are always there for you, who support you, laugh with you, help you grow. I didn't know if I'd ever meet Rowan again, if we'd ever reconcile. It didn't matter so much anymore. I'd done what I had to do, for him and for me. The rest was in his hands, and I was free. Free of the past, free of guilt, free of toxic relationships, free to start a new life at 68, a life of travel, new experiences, new horizons, a life on my terms, not anyone else's. And as I looked up at the stars from the terrace of the house that was mine again, I thought, this is just the beginning.